Okay. Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Item 2, I'd like a motion to go into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA Section 405 6E to confer with legal counsel. Do I have a motion? Motion by Lou, second by Lorna. All in favor? Any opposed? No? Okay, we are headed for executive session. We'll see you all at 6 o'clock. Thank you. to return to the general session. Have a motion from Lou, second from Lorna. So all in favor? Any opposed? No. Okay. We are back in open session. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. I don't have much. I'll have some more comments just before the public comment period, but I just would like to acknowledge the passing of Delise Conley, who Delise was a longtime teacher and secretary in the district at Fisher Mitchell. She's also a neighbor and a friend of mine, and I realize after I spoke with Patrick briefly about my intent to do this, he indicated we don't often recognize our retirees when they do pass on, and maybe that's something we should do more. I mean, these are folks who have committed a great deal of the life. I mean, Delise was born in Bath, was a Morse grad, and gave us 25 good years in Fisher Mitchell, and we're certainly sorry, and our sympathies to her family, and maybe it's something we should do a little bit more as a board, to and as a way to recognize our retirees. Okay, item 6.0 is we have minutes from the regular meeting on June 28th and the special meeting on August 16th, last Monday. If it's okay, we'll take the minutes together, both minutes together. Any corrections or changes to the minutes?
Steve?
Yep. Jamie?
From the minutes from the June meeting, I had asked a couple of questions regarding the social work and around the establishing the self-contained behavior program. I asked a number of questions, and my biggest concern was about the social work, and I don't see that listed there.
Okay.
So that would just be my only
Okay.
request.
Why don't we'll have Vita reach out to you and look for wording that we can put in there that indicate the questions that you've asked.
That's great. And then there was also an attachment with that about the Morse High Anchor program. And I had some comments on that, and I wasn't sure if that's something we can talk about here, or would I email?
Well, if it's part of the, we're going to approve the minutes as amended in this case. So if you have,
No, but the anchor program was something that I sent to you guys. It's just kind of backup. So I was gonna, in my report tonight, just
okay.
ask if anybody had questions on that. And Justin is on, out there virtually
Okay.
to see if you had any questions. I mean, I know I sent you the, the applications and who we're recommending to fill that position, but then we also sent you that backup of what the program will contain, what it looks like, and if you had any questions for Justin. So I'll bring that up under 10.1.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.
okay. Any other changes or corrections to the minutes? Yeah, Lorna?
Yep, just a few. I want to clarify. On June 28th, under comments from the board chairperson, it says, Chairperson August stated that this is the first public board meeting since March 2020. I'm wondering if it just might be worth saying first in person.
Yeah, it should be correct. Obviously, all our board meetings are public meetings.
Right,
But
just
in
to
person.
clarify.
Yep.
And then on page 2 at the top paragraph, main school management is considered about loss or shifting from financial control. I think that's concerned. Page 2 of those
Yep.
minutes of June 28th.
Okay. we'll get those changes to,
And then
to
we still the same meeting. No, I think that was it for 28. Yeah, that was it.
okay. Anything on the 16th or?
I don't think so. Oh, yeah, at the very bottom of page, on the 16th, sorry, August 16th, page 2, very bottom, where it starts with Dr. Hannah,
Mhm.
something just doesn't make sense to me. It says, we will be wearing, subject will not be revisited. I don't think it's meant to say that. Dr. Hannah stated that we should not be going into school year thinking that we will be wearing masks all year, and that this subject will not be revisited. I think it just, I know what it means, but I just got confused on that. So it's saying that it doesn't mean that it won't be revisited. is what
Well,
it's
probably if you strike, it probably, the intent was that the subject will be revisited.
That's the intent, okay. That was it.
Okay. So we'll strike the not out of Dr. Hannah's comment there. And so there are a couple of amended changes, and you'll speak with Vita, and we'll get some wording on your questions into the minutes as well. So do we have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I'll approve as amended.
We have a motion by Lorna, second by Jamie. All in favor? Any opposed? No. Okay, thank you. Okay, item 7.0, adjustments to agenda. Patrick, do you have anything? No, I don't either. Okay, item 8.0, public comment. Again, we thank the public for attending the meeting. I mean, could you just, again, by show of hands, how many would like to address the board on any, this could be on any issue that's on the agenda? Okay, we have a couple. Okay, fine. Again, just to reiterate for those folks who don't regularly attend our meetings, this is, we will take your comment. It's not an opportunity to engage the board in conversation or discussion, but we appreciate your comment, and we will certainly listen intently. This public comment period, since it's a regular board meeting, I'm sure some of you are here to talk about masking, but it's also an opportunity to talk about any other issues that appear on the agenda or things that you'd like to bring to the board's attention. So anyways, it's we're going to open public comment. Yep. Would you just, or I should say, if you would just come to the mic, and if you would slowly say your name and what community you represent.
Thanks, Steve.
Go ahead.
Sorry. My name is Melinda Baxter. I'm from Woolwich, and I have a rising senior. I don't like to speak publicly with notes, but I feel it's important that I stick to what I've written here tonight. I have been an advocate for alternative health for over 20 years through my professional work and personal choices. For the past 11 years, I've worked as a holistic health coach and functional nutrition practitioner. I'm no stranger to having to dig a little deeper and research to get good information on how to prevent illness and promote wellness, which is not what Western medicine promotes. We are being fed a steady diet of fear, and important decisions should never be made from a place of fear. A fear state triggers one to overreact. Our brain's capacity for creative thinking, seeing a larger picture, and coming from a place of compassion, desire to connect to others, and understanding is greatly reduced when we're in fear, which is also known as fight or flight. Fear also suppresses the immune system. The majority of our country has been in this state for the past year and a half, and the results of that are being seen in small and very large ways that are extremely detrimental to our communities and the world at large. Mandating masks is a continuation of this fear state. They provide a false sense of security, In all the research I've done, I have found no actual trials, meaning randomized control trials. One of the research papers I read on masking related to flu transmission referenced a hierarchy of evidence that goes from the top approach being systematic reviews and meta-analyses and randomized control trials as the gold standards, down through 6 other phases and ending at expert opinion, being the least scientific and reliable. How many times in the past 18 months have we heard the phrase experts say? Too many hundreds of times to count. The numbers don't necessitate a demand for an intervention that is not proven to be effective in most environments, including schools, where the transmission among children is extremely low. Dr. Roshni Matthew, a Stanford School of Medicine pediatric infectious disease specialist, told NPR, for children in particular, the risk of serious consequences from COVID-19 is the same magnitude as the risk they face from flu. The statistics I found show that somewhere just north or south of 400 children have died from COVID in the US out of 4 million who contracted it, while there have been 540,000 children who have died in the same time frame from other causes. The majority of the deaths were in children who had severe underlying conditions. This is out of 73 to 75 million children, depending on whether a child is deemed under 18 or 19 years old. So let's let that sink in. 400 is actually, I've actually seen the number 397 more consistently, have died from COVID in the US out of 4 million who contracted it. While there have been 540,000 children who have died from other causes in the same time period. And most of those were with severe underlying conditions. Yet we want to mask up our children. If our children's best interest is at heart on all levels, these numbers have to be taken into consideration. An American child's potential to die from COVID is 0.001%. COVID deaths account for 0.07% of all childhood deaths in the past 18 months. And that's not to minimize any deaths, but we have to keep the data in focus here. Looking at the spread of Delta in other countries, some with mask mandates and some without, the variant spiked and then dissipated regardless of these mandates. Israel reinstated its mandate in late June, and the numbers have followed the same trends as countries hit by Delta without mask mandates. The New England Journal of Medicine had this to say about masks in May 2020. We know that wearing a mask outside healthcare facilities offers little, if any, protection from infection. Instead of impeding our children's breathing and having them rebreathe their own germs, limit their ability to learn from oxygen deprivation, which as we've heard from other parents last week in particular, causes many other symptoms like headaches, fatigue, and anxiety, inhibits their ability to read faces and see smiles and other social cues that are incredibly important for development, especially with the younger children. Let's teach them ways to support their immune systems with simple and inexpensive interventions and tools. This isn't being discussed at all, locally, nationally, or globally. And when I started a beautifully respectful and heartfelt discussion on the topic of personal responsibility on Facebook 2 months ago, it was removed for going against community standards. What are our community standards? Are we going to dig deeper to find the real truth? Or are we going to capitulate to the fear and data cherry picking that's been afoot this whole time? Are we going to choose love over fear and send one of the most important messages we can to our children, that we can do what's right and hard in the face of a lot of pressure to do otherwise, and not teach our children to be scared of germs and the very life-giving air we breathe, as Tammy spoke about last week? Are we going to advocate for true health instead of waiting for an experimental drug or needing pharmaceuticals to get through the day because exercising, eating well, taking vitamin D, C, etc. feel like too much work? These are the community standards I'm interested in talking about. Not whether a flimsy piece of fabric is really going to block a virus that is 4 microns in its aerosolized form, when most of these masks don't protect against anything under 100 microns. We are not going to put our children in N95 masks. I know that. So this is what we're left with. This is not a decision that should be made by governing bodies. It is a decision that should fall on the purview of the parents who know their children best. So I just wanted to actually make a comment, because this came out yesterday, and it's from the WHO, this graph showing the virus in Germany and Sweden. Germany, who has 58% vaccination rates, Sweden has 51%. The Germans have actually, many of their citizens have been utilizing N95 masks. The Swedes have about a 9% mask wearing in their country. And the trajectory on this graph, like I said, it's from WHO, the World Health Organization, has an incredibly similar trajectory. It spikes and then it decreases, with Sweden's numbers being slightly lower throughout that whole time frame. So there aren't any randomized control trials right now. All we have is observational studies and looking at graphs and things like this. But the studies that I've done about respiratory viruses in the past, the most recent one that I found that was really spoken about in my research was from 2015, that these masks do not prevent transmission and they are not effective in these kinds of environments. And things like hand washing and et cetera are helpful. But for our kids who have such low transmission rates and also in terms of spreading it to others, very low, it's just, for me, they should not be compulsory. And I just want to say thank you so much for your time and for what you're doing in an unprecedented and incredibly difficult climate. I appreciate each one of you. I know some of you personally, and I respect you and I respect what you're doing. And I just want to say thank you to all the people who spoke last week, who gave me the courage to come up here and do this, because it takes courage. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Melinda.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Maureen Reese, Craney, excuse me, and I live in West Bath. And I unfortunately was not able to attend the meeting last week. Would have been great to be here to share my comment then. And I just want to share in my excitement that our children are going to be back in school 100%. And that's very exciting and hopeful. But also my greatest concern is that I have not heard a lot about what the plan is as far as how to support our kids' social and emotional health if they are going to be wearing masks in school. I feel this is really important. I think we can all speak to that since we've all probably had to have them on. We lose a piece of communication, a piece of connecting with individuals, and I think that is a large part of what our children are doing in school. Yes, there is a lot of academic things going on, but they learn a lot, building relationships, and I just think there's so much that can be lost if our children are in school, not to mention their physical health, but I'm more specifically concerned about the social and emotional piece. And I really would hope that we will see very shortly some plans, some very definitive, specific plans of how we can support our students socially and emotionally. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Maureen. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Rock Morin. I'm a chiropractor here in town. And I apologize if what I'm going to say you've heard before. And I also want to thank all of you for the work that you do. I know it's not easy. My kids are currently out of school, but they all went to school here in this community. My wife's a teacher in this community. And I can tell you from my personal experience that in the last year and a half, I have certainly seen a lot more patients come in my practice with complaints of headaches, migraines, breathing issues, things like that. So it's a real concern. The other part of it is, I came in partly through Melinda. She was going through a lot of the research. There isn't any good controlled clinical data showing effectiveness of masks. There's some observational stuff with lots of confounding variables and other things that we can't account for necessarily. But even the studies where there shows there might be some benefit, that's in a highly controlled environment. What kind of environment are our kids going to be in with these masks? Sitting in the back of the room, I was just sitting up here watching all of you with your masks on. And I see people touching their masks and fidgeting and then touching other things, in a hospital setting, in an OR, they get sterile, they wash up, they put the mask on, they don't touch it again. They got to change it periodically, things like that. What are our kids doing? What are we doing? I see people out in the grocery store with, mask is covered in dirt and people seem to be okay, like that's protecting them. It's silly. They're touching it, they're fiddling with it, they touch the keypad, but they've got the mask on, so they think they're okay. But what are our kids doing? They're not keeping those masks sterile. It's a breeding ground for bacteria and other issues. So just from a practical standpoint, even in an ideal condition, if it offered some minute benefit, that would be great. But we know these kids aren't going to do that. So let's just be practical and be wise about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks. Any other comments? Again, on any issue?
Hello, Carol Reese, Phippsburg. I spoke actually last week, and so I'm speaking again. I know tonight you're going to make a decision, and again, I guess I would ask, some of the things I talked about last week were, sports. Do we need to have the kids playing sports without masks on, participating in gym without masks on? We also need specific, a better idea about mask breaks. That was another thing that I found last year that wasn't really, I think my son would come home and complain about not having mask breaks or proper. When I reached out, I think kind of like a mask break for the class was you got turns at a window to take your mask down off your face. So I think when we were first talking about it, as a parent, I was thinking, okay, mask breaks, they're going to be able to go outside. They're going to be able to take that mask off. They're going to be able to have some fresh air. They're going to be able to, get an actual break, not sit there, you get your 5 minutes, time's up, get back at your seat type thing. So, do you know, can I ask you guys questions tonight? I can't, okay. Well, I'd like to know, and maybe somebody can email me.
Yeah, we are going to obviously on, section 11 of the agenda, we will be talking about the plan.
Mhm. And you'll be taking questions then?
And well, no, we won't be taking questions, but I do think, as you said, you did speak last week. I think we took your comments very seriously.
Yep.
To the extent that some might be addressed in the discussion we have on the plan. We'll just see how that goes.
Well, maybe somebody can email me what the specific mask break should look like for the classrooms at some point. Can you
Carol,
do that?
I'll touch on that when I go through my thing, and then I'll follow up with you as well.
Okay, I probably won't be here, but I'll go home
That's
and
fine.
watch.
No, I can email you. Yeah.
Okay, or that'd be good. Also, let's see, did I touch base? Another thing that last week when Annie Sarbanes of Pittsburgh spoke, I was really moved and upset by that. I actually lost a couple of nights sleep over that because I couldn't stop thinking about her daughter and her, having to take anxiety medication because of having to wear that mask. I would imagine you guys felt the same. I would hope you felt the same. It's pretty alarming what some of these kids are going through. So I would just hope that you're taking those comments in consideration when you make your decision tonight. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Okay, any other comments? We did receive 23 additional written comments, and as I have in the past, I'll just read those names. These are folks who contacted us through email and other ways. Ellie Benoit, Emily Talmadge, Beth Polis, Tim Blair, and Kate Dempsey, Krista Van Vliet, Lisa Ledgwig, Michelle Lambert, Amber Herzog, Ren Bova, Bruce Hoptlin, Camille Koffunger. I'm sorry with name, if I destroy your name, I apologize. Alyssa Coates, Amy Lang, Amy Martin, Mark Mankey, Jessica Mankey, Judy Wolf, Lori Webb Taft, Jeremy Cooper, Robert Lobus, Stephanie Prue, Lisa Vinencourt, Alyssa Finn, Linda Skurnick, and Will Eichert contacted us through email. So we do have those public comments, and the comments that were offered tonight verbally, and those comments will be entered into the record of the meeting. Any other public comment for the board? If not, thank you very much. Thanks for those who presented tonight. I appreciate it. Okay, item 9.0, committee reports. 9.1, we have the high school building committee project update.
Yeah, the first thing is, we thought we had September 20th as the official date for the ribbon cutting ceremony here at Morse High School in Bath Tech, but we may have to, it's going to be the week of the 20th. It just may not be September 20th. So that'll be again, invites will go out and any member of the public can come here. And part of the ceremony will be outside, and then we will offer tours inside the building here. So the week of the 20th, and we'll get that on our website soon. As far as this building during the summer, most of the work has been on window testing around the building. Some acoustical panels that need to go in some of the science rooms and the art rooms. Air exchange works very well, but there are some rooms in the school that we had to work on this summer that were just a little bit louder and we're taking away from the instruction. And then the site work, for any of you that have brought your student athletes up here, we're in the process of putting crushed rock around the turf field. We're gonna be paving out back between the two different fields, and there's a lot of landscaping. And the scoreboard arrived this weekend at Crooker, and the scoreboard will be put up in the next couple of weeks out here on the turf field. So just a lot of different things going on, but we've made a lot of progress over the summertime. So I don't know if you have any questions.
Questions of Patrick? No? Okay, thanks, Patrick. 9.2, facilities committee update. Bill?
This one. Thank you, Pauline. Facilities Committee met this past week to address several issues and receive a presentation from a private company called Revision Energy, in which a very complete picture was drawn of, number one, how we could profit from contracting with this particular company, and how the company is moving forward on the whole issue of solar and renewable energy. So there's two positive things. We can save a buck and we can save the earth, I guess, with the renewable energy. Thing is, they want a 20-year contract with the RSU, with us and other RSUs around the area. And the committee studied what was being presented, and then we turned to our superintendent and we said, check it out, will you? See what other districts are doing, what other districts have possibly contracted with this organization, with this company, and then get back to us. So this will be a living kind of issue, but we're not ready to make a recommendation this evening on whether we should contract with Revision or not. So that was the number one thing, and it was an interesting presentation. We had the whiteboard and we had projectors, and the man was very convincing. And it's a worthwhile goal, certainly, to save dough and to save the earth. But we need to make sure that it makes sense for RSU1, particularly the 20-year contract, which kind of my old eyebrows kind of flooded on that one. So we're going to check it out, and Patrick will get back to us, if not with a recommendation, at least with further information. The other three items that I have here, I'm not sure whether we discuss them now or we should discuss them when we discuss the state subsidy, the increase in the state subsidy, because each of these issues are tied fiscally at this point, are tied to the increased state subsidy. So would you prefer to deal with them then on 12.2, or you want me to present them now?
Why don't you, we only have, I think a discussion, although I see it is marked for action, but a discussion on state.
It is marked for action, and these issues are
Yeah, but
part of that.
I didn't think we intended.
No, it's just for discussion tonight, the state
Want to
subdivision.
present them now?
Yeah, and I apologize. There was, as you know, there was multiple agendas. I think an updated one got sent out to you. It is for just discussion tonight, the subsidy.
So why don't you put out what those ideas are and.
Let's roll then, okay?
Yeah.
Number one thing is an issue that has surfaced here before around the quality of air, the air and the quality of temperatures at the Woolwich Central School. And Patrick has investigated, not Patrick, under Patrick's leadership, Dave Richards has worked this through all the way to the bottom line dollar. This is what we can do. This is, we can air condition the classroom portion of the Woolwich School, in which of course would include the staircase with the tower, which is the major complaint, is the tremendous heat that builds up in that area of the school. It certainly is necessary in terms of that area of the school, and it's pretty hard just to do that one area if you knew the building. We need to do that whole area of the school. The bottom line for this, and he had already costed it out, was $155,000 to air condition the classroom portion and the tower at the Woolwich Central School. So there was a pretty, there's not a lot of us on the committee, but those of us on the committee felt that this probably was quite appropriate and would be an appropriate use of the additional, our portion of the additional subsidy. So that's number one. We want to spend some money on that. Second thing, we've been nursing along the boiler at the Dyke Newell School. Boy, way back before the bond issue even, putting a pipe in here and a pipe in there, and a lot of work has been done to maintain its functionality. But at this point, Mr. Richards is quite concerned that the boiler has far outlived its ability to continue functioning, and he's very concerned about the near future with that boiler. So that, again, he hadn't costed that one out, but that's something that we, facilities-wise, we would like to see if we have the additional resources, we'd like to move forward with that. Any questions as I go along? Dyke Newell, okay, so we got Woolwich and Dyke Newell. Then we move over to my hometown. Apparently, there are problems with the roof there. While we did the roofs at the middle school, we've done a considerable amount of work on the roofs of our older schools. That was not yet done and has been put off. And Mr. Richards would like to be able to proceed with that, with some of that additional subsidy. I don't think it's leaking bad, but it was neglected in the last round of roofs. And let's see, the only other, those are the issues to be taken a look at in terms of 12.2 when we get around to talking about the utilization of the additional funds. The other thing was, if you've been in the various school buildings, you probably have noticed that there hasn't been the usual summer crew painting walls. in the hallways, in the cafeteria, in the classrooms. The reason, according to Mr. Richards, and I have no reason to disbelieve it, the reason is that he only had one employee this summer, where he used to have, 4, 5, 6, generally teachers in the summertime with a summer job doing that work. And he only had one person this past summer. And so the amount of work that was done was only commensurate with the amount of personnel that were available. And we'll get to it. It'll be on the agenda for next year, and we'll see if conditions have changed, if we can get back into the rhythm of cleaning and painting our classrooms and so forth. I think that's it. Pat, did I forget anything? Okay. Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Bill. Any questions of Bill? Yep, Jen.
Bill, thanks for that. The questions I would have on the amount of work that we want to do in schools that may be on the list for a new school, I guess what I would like in the consideration is to know when these schools might be replaced, given how much work we put into them now, and also when this work would happen, when it would be, the proposed work in all the schools would be slated to happen. Would it be something that would happen this school year, or would it wait until next summer? Those are my questions. Thanks.
I had the feeling that the Woolwich project could be accomplished during a school vacation, to the extent that it would be functional and necessary as we move into the springtime, when we're apt to run into those 80-degree days with the 70 humidity, and which were very disruptive to the kids and the faculty over there last year. So that would be our goal. And he has moved forward in terms of negotiating with various vendors and coming up with a bottom line price and everything. So he's pretty much ready to roll with that. And we'd have to schedule it with the least disruption to the school itself. That answer that question? Okay. We'd like to get it done. If we can do it without a serious disruption of the school, it'll be done. As long as we approve the money.
Okay. Thanks, Bill. Thanks. I think what we need to proceed with this, is a presentation from Dave, and maybe we can get it at the next board meeting that prioritizes, projects in the district. It isn't, it should, at least in my mind, it shouldn't simply be a question of, the availability of additional state subsidy that makes us appear to pull this project out of the air and say, well, let's do it. Getting a full facilities update from Dave with some of the questions like, where are we on the state list to replace the 2 elementary schools in Bath, for example? What's the what's the process or the progress on our application to the state for state aid for that purpose? That should really be part of a comprehensive discussion. Again, not just here's a project, it's time to do it. So maybe we can schedule that for our next meeting. Okay. Any questions of Bill? Any additional questions of Bill? Nope. Thanks. Thank you, Bill. Okay. 10.0 Superintendent's Report. Patrick?
So just a update on the first of school. We have new staff orientation on the 31st, and we have about 15 new professional staff that will be with us that day. Professional development for teachers is on September 1 and 2, and then K-9 students will be with us on September 7th, and then everybody on the 8th, except for pre-K, which starts the following week. Right now, we have 2 teacher openings, 3 ed tech openings, and 1 secretarial position. And then bus routes, hopefully all the parents and staff saw those. They were out, they're on our website, they were in all of our usual places. And if parents have any questions, concerns, there's an email there. You can call central office, but also an email to First Student, who is our new bus contractor. And they seem to be very well prepared and organized for day one. And then set for success, Jamie's here. She can answer all kinds of questions if you have any, but we're encourage everybody out there to come here on Saturday between 10 and 2, correct? For Set for Success, which Jamie has done, her organization has done, and would like to thank all the volunteers who will be here. For any students in the district and families to come, receive a backpack, receive supplies, get a haircut, come and see different community organizations and services that are available to families. And so it's a great community event that will be held right here. You come in this door, get all your supplies through here and exit over here. And the haircuts will be in our new cosmetology room, which is back here. So we're very excited to have this facility to be able to pull this event off. And again, 10 to 2, we usually have a rush at the beginning, but anytime between 10 and 2, we have plenty of school supplies. And it's just a wonderful opportunity for families in our community, and would like to thank Jamie and her crew for putting this on. Anything else, Jamie, you want to add? No? Okay. And then last but not least, I put back in June, we talked about the need for a self-contained program, and we're calling it Morse High School Anchor Program. And we did find a staff person for that position. And our plan is to, again, have students come back from alternative placements so that we can serve them here in the district. And I did put in your backup a kind of a description of the program, which was asked for back in June. So if you have any questions, I can possibly answer them. And if I can't, Justin's here on the line tonight as well.
Okay, Jamie, you have questions?
Yes, I
Yeah.
do. As I mentioned before, I'm very pleased and excited that we're welcoming our students back into Morse High School. And as I was reading down through this, I identified a couple of places I would love to see sort of tweaked a little bit. In my work and in my role during the day, I advocate for mental health, as many of you know. And I sort of read down through this as a parent, but also as how would I feel if I was a student reading this? And so I think if we could sort of take some of the terms that maybe are coming from a deficit point of view and tweak them to be more supportive, things like, students who are at risk of being placed in out-of-district programs, maybe they could be identified as potentially needing additional support. There's a term called problem behavior or disruptive and challenging behaviors, and even the term emotional disturbance, which I think is used in the special ed world, but I just would be so heartbroken for a student to read that about themselves, or even a parent to, have that label. So I can sort of email the terms that I had identified. Other than that, like I said, I'm really excited to have students back in our district, and think, knowing the people that are involved, that it'll be a great success.
Okay, thanks, Jamie. Thanks. Any other questions of Patrick on those issues? Okay. Item 10.2, financial report, as Patrick is going to do this tonight, I guess. Patrick?
I'll do the best I can, so take it easy on me. So year-to-date report ending June 30th, so that is our end of our fiscal year. So we spent 95.7% of our 38 million and change budget, which is 1.6 million and change. And that is a little bit more than normal that we have left over, and I'm not complaining about that, but obviously it was a unique year. Part of that was electrical fuel costs were projected higher, came in a little lower. We used some federal money for certain items, and also we weren't able to spend as much, let it be field trips, transportation, conferences, just all of those PD that we would bring people in, or we would go different places. So again, that money goes to our carryover. So that is the year to date. And then on the second page, Deb outlined the federal grants for you. So the ESSER1 grant, still has 200,000 in it, but that is for, a nurse at one of our schools. And it also is for a roaming nurse that we have in the budget for this current year. And also any other funds that we need for pool testing this year. You can see the first CRF grant is all done, all spent. And out of that 1.6 million, we had $656 left. And then CRF2, 1.7 million, and we spent all but 140,000 of that. And then we're in ESSER2 right now, which is primarily used for staffing for this upcoming year. And then the last one, the ESSER3, or sometimes referred to as ARP, which is the $4 million, which we'll be talking about a little bit later tonight. That plan is, the application is due, it says end of June on this, but it's end of September is when that application is due. So any financial questions, if I can't answer them, I can certainly take them back to Deb. She'll be back in the office later this week.
Okay. Any questions, Jim?
Patrick, you're no Deb, but that's okay. You're doing a great job. We just miss her guidance and wisdom so much. The 1.6 left over from this year's budget, when do we have to make a decision on what to do about that?
That would go into carryover. I mean, Hank, our auditor, comes in October, and he finalizes the details on that, but it would roll over into our carryover. And again, we used 1 million, just to remind the board, this year to keep our budget down, to try to keep the taxes as reasonable as possible. So with that, again, I think I put in an email to you guys that we would have around 2.2 with this 1.6 because of using 1 million last year.
So that money can't be used to reduce the cost. Just to clarify, it can't be used to reduce the local cost to any of our towns in terms of them calculating mill rates for this.
Not for this year. It
year,
would be, in essence, though, it would be a year out from now, because we're able to. We have the flexibility. The board does have the flexibility to reduce, the overall impact to taxes by applying it to next year's budget.
Right.
But what we talk about later is the additional state subsidy that we received after the fact. That's one that could go directly back to the towns.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Lorna?
Patrick, I'm sorry, I didn't hear, when you were going over the grants, you did mention that there's funding for the roaming nurse and the pool testing nurse. When you were giving a personnel update, are we good on those positions, or are we still seeking those positions as well?
Which positions specifically?
I'm sorry, the nurse, both, a roaming nurse and a pool testing
No,
nurse.
the roaming nurse is solidified. We've got that person.
Okay,
And then Katie, I don't want to speak for her, but she can fill you in on the two nurses that we have through the company.
okay, thank you.
And that's also, isn't the fund also to maintain a nurse full-time at Phippsburg as well? But I just got word today from the people we're working with from the pool testing company that they have secured 2 RNs for us who will be able to start on September 13th, which is our requested start date, because that's the first day that we have all kindergartners there and all pre-K students there. It's the first day that all of our students pre-K to 12 will be present. And so they've said that right now we're all set. So currently all of our nursing positions are full. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. Any other questions on financial reports? No, okay, thanks. Okay, old business, 11.0. This will be the board's opportunity to discuss our reopening protocols, the reopening plan that the administration has discussed with us and shared a slightly revised copy with us tonight, I guess, but they'll discuss those revisions. I believe we have Dr. Hannah online for any questions that the board may have of her regarding those health recommendations. As the written comments and as the folks who have spoken to us tonight and who spoke to us back a week ago, I mean, this has been an important issue to the community and to our community and to the community at large. COVID has come at us in multiple ways. I mean, as parents, as students, as teachers, as medical professionals, it has unfortunately dominated our conversations for a long time. It seems too long, but it is likely to dominate conversations for a little bit longer as we get into the school year. But as I've said before, and I'll reiterate, I believe the board is unified on this, that our commitment to the community is to open the schools with 100% in-class educational opportunity in this upcoming year, and further to do everything that we can to keep those schools open as we proceed through the year. So with that, I'll turn it over to Patrick and Katie to walk us through the protocols. Patrick?
Yeah, I'm just going to go down through the components of the administration's recommended reopening plan to help us open our schools safely this year. We feel this plan allows us to implement a layered system of strategies to maximize in-person learning and social emotional support for our students while minimizing disruptions. And I mean disruptions due to illnesses and quarantines for students, but also the hardship that it causes for families as well. And I would say, I'll echo what Steve said, is that we do really appreciate all of the input that we've received regarding mostly, masking on here, but also other items and some very good questions that have come up over the last couple of weeks. I'm just going to go down through the major components of this plan, and then we will, then we'll open up for discussion, and the board will, obviously make a recommendation, take a motion tonight. The first thing is just the pre-screening that we'll continue to do daily. Students, staff, and anyone entering our buildings should continue to perform the daily screener on themselves. And we will, when we send this out tomorrow, the Maine Department of Education did update their screening tool. And so I like it. It's simple, but I think it's clear to parents and to students. So we have that as a link here, as well as some guidelines that our nursing staff put together. Distancing, again, the recommendation is to maintain at least 3 feet of physical distance between students and classrooms to reduce the transmission risk. And we're able to provide that 3 feet in the majority of places in the district. But if there are a few places where we're not able to do that, again, it's not going to impede the district from offering 100% in-person 5 days a week. The hand hygiene, again, all students and staff are encouraged to exercise hand hygiene at key times during the day. And if, a student or a staff member can't get, to a sink or the bathroom, then, obviously recommending the 60% alcohol hand sanitizer that will also be available throughout the district. Cleaning and disinfecting, we'll conduct cleaning of high-touch surfaces throughout the school day. And then if there is a COVID case, within 24 hours, the space will be cleaned and disinfected. The ventilation, we went over last week a little bit, but all the work that we've done with ionization to make sure that we can reduce the number of virus particles in the air. So we did that last year, and we also are cleaning our air filters more frequently. And again, anything from keeping windows open, doors open, and every school, maybe with the exception of Morse, depending on where we can put it here if the courtyard is ready, but every school will have tents this fall, as well as the plan is to have outside tents next spring if needed. Vaccinations, we're not requiring these of students or staff, but it's strongly encouraged to keep our schools as safe as possible. And we will continue to partner with Midcoast Hospital to offer additional vaccine clinics, hopefully here in the district. And we're continually sending out information to families to let them know where they can receive a vaccination. The pool testing piece, that is state recommended optional for students and staff to be administered at all of our schools if we get that 30% threshold of interest at our schools. And again, it allows for fewer quarantines when possible positive cases of COVID-19 are detected. So a couple updates on this one is September 13th is the day that we'd like to start that pool testing. Thanks to Katie's diligence, we've got the two nurses that will be our staffing. And then we will be sending a consent form. It will be part of a letter that will go out either probably tomorrow that will also, again, have the consent form embedded in there, and it can be done electronically for students and staff. Transportation, as per the state requirement, all students, staff, and drivers must wear masks on any form of student transportation. Again, we're going to do our best to keep the windows down, at least 4 on a bus for ventilation. And students can now sit together on the buses. So we're back to our normal bus runs, and those have been published. Athletics, I know Carol was here before, but athletics, as you know, preseason has started here. It will start soon at the middle school level. We follow the main DOE and the main Principals Association guidelines. And right now, face masks would be required when they're on buses. But as far as during competition, during practices, when they're outdoors, there's no face mask, no masking that's required there for athletics. Distance learning, we do have a limited distance learning option that's available for students who have a medical need. And again, we've put that out there to families, and if anybody has questions, they can reach out to us at central office. Visitors. We're going to continue to limit visitors to the schools and try to minimize those large group gatherings. But obviously try to provide an opportunity for parents, though, to come in and follow our protocols, to be in the schools as much as possible. Field trips, if they're essential to the curriculum, then we're going to, and we can follow our health and safety protocols, we're going to do the best we can to offer some of those. Indoor eating. When eating, students and staff, regardless of vaccination status, should be a minimum of 3 feet apart and facing in the same direction, whenever possible. And there could be, again, we're on calls once a week. Next week, the DOE or the CDC could give us something different on that eating. But again, our attempt is to try to go back to the lunch periods that we had prior and not stretching out our lunch periods that take up more, I guess I would say, more instructional time for students. And then the last part is obviously the masking, and the administration supports, based on the CDC guidance, as well as the advice and consultation of our consulting physician, to support universal indoor masking for students, staff, and visitors, regardless of vaccination status. Outside, masks will not be required of anyone. The breaks that came up last week, we really take that to heart. Indoor mask breaks can take place when they're needed. It should be provided to students throughout the day, and it should be able to be done inside or outside. We have a meeting tomorrow. We're going to talk about this further. Again, if I'm a teacher and I just got done, they just had recess, and somebody needs a mask break, a half hour later, I may not take the whole class back outside, but I'll find a way for that student or two that needs mask breaks. So we heard that, loud and clear last week, and we'll do a much better job at that. Staff may remove masks when working alone in their rooms. The changing of masks, I know a lot has been said about the effectiveness of masks, and I certainly hear that. If they get dirty, wet or dirty, should be changed. We always recommend families to bring an extra mask to school, but we have an ample supply of masks at each one of our schools, and obviously after last week, we need to do a better job of letting families know that, because it certainly wasn't clear, especially maybe at the elementary level, that we have again, tons of masks that families and students can take and use. The masking accommodations, allowances will be made for medically documented cases that require accommodations under Section 504 of the American with Disabilities Act. And I'll just stop there, but I do want to stress that, the board is going to have a discussion now, but that these are, I think all of us expect and hope that these are interim measures. This is not something forever. It will allow us to, we're going to revisit it, we're going to review it, but feel like it gives us the best chance to start school safely. And again, trying to keep all of our students and staff in school 100% of the time.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Dr. Hannah, I don't know if you had anything you want to add or just respond to questions, that'd be fine.
I don't have anything specific to add. I mean, I can give updates on vaccines and everything, but I can just respond to questions. I think that should be fine.
Great, thank you, thank you. Okay, so we're going to open it for discussion. I think just as a general comment, I guess, whatever direction we take as we adopt these protocols, we've got to do a really good job of communicating what our expectations are to the community and to our students, and that's communication from the district, building level communication. It needs to be coordinated, and we need. And I guess what I'm trying to do is, or suggest, is that we have to ensure that some of the frustration that we heard expressed in public comment is, which is linked to the lack of information of what it is that what our expectations are of students and families. I mean, that can be addressed through a good coordinated, strong communications effort on the part of the district. So I know I think we do a good job of that, but we'll take a close look and make sure that areas that we feel can be improved, we'll improve them as well. So other than that, I will open it up to questions of Patrick, Katie, or Dr. Hannah, or anyone. Lou?
Thanks, Steve. So I just had a few questions in regards to if we were to go this route. Some people mentioned about gym class. Are we planning to be outside as much as possible when inside? I mean, I just can't, we know a lot more now. I just can't see that no one should be wearing masks while they're exerting themselves and playing whatever games they think they really need, whether it's better spacing in the gym or outside. I just wondered what we're looking at for that.
So first of all, I think we all agree, and because no one will have to be masked outside between mask breaks, having class outside, whether it's under the tent or not, and doing PE or anything related to physical exertion will be done outside as much as possible. We've also spent some time and money brainstorming with some of our PE teachers for new equipment that they could use, and have purchased some of that with some of the funds we just went through. So for instance, Woolwich has a whole new fleet of scooters because the teacher there wanted more outdoor activities that he could create new units for. I believe at Morse, we're actually purchasing some kayaks so students can be out on the water potentially. They might be, I don't know what those are down there, but there might be something down there that we already, there they are. We have put a lot of thought into how much time we can spend outside, what alternative activities students can be doing rather than being indoors, so they can continue to progress in all the standards for that course, but also not be constrained with indoor activities that we would typically do. I think the same can be said for our music classes as well. They've done a lot of creative thinking around drumming and other activities. They'll have more lenience this year as well, but that's definitely something that we're all thinking about.
And can I just, and this kind of goes to, as you were saying, Patrick, that, this is an interim. I think what, you know, I really feel it's just that the state is really, we don't want kids to have to quarantine. They're basically saying if you don't do a mask mandate, then people have to quarantine. We don't want people to have to quarantine. If we start out the year with masks, whether we're looking I'm hoping that we get some kind of update every board meeting on where we're at, how things are going. I know you were suggesting maybe October's, we will have a lot more data that we can look at, but I'm hoping we can get some parameters from the state, and I don't know whether you ask them or the board officially asks, but we need some parameters that are, is it 80% vaccination rate in the building? I mean, I know we can't do anything for the 12 and under yet, but for the middle school, high school, there has to be a delineation point that says, well, if this curve, as people have come up and talked about, if the curve is going down, if your community transmission is low, if the positivity rate's low and your percentage is X amount, when can we go optional because it would be safe in that particular school or different school buildings? Because I think this is going to be a dynamic thing. We may have outbreaks where we have to wear masks for a month, and it may be fine where we are optional for 2 months. But I understand starting the year off this way to be safe, to make sure everyone's okay, but to monitor it. And I think we're going to have these case studies because a couple of school districts are going optional already. So we'll see where they are at the end of September, whether there's huge outbreaks and they have to close or whether it's not a big deal or, because I think, this has happened so rapidly. When did we vote in June, right? We voted in June that we thought, okay, this is getting better. We'll go with optional. Now we're back here 2 months later. So I don't know where we'll be in September, but I just want to make sure it's in the forefront and that the public understands this is not okay, masks, then we don't look at it till December. I want to, I'm not saying we reevaluate everything every month, but to get the updates every month. Are we looking at any kind of change? Can it change for one building, another one? As we get updates about, vaccination for 12 and under, obviously that'll be a game changer. So I'm just asking that however is the appropriate channel that we ask the state, this is what we're looking for, or are we with the guidance of our position supposed to do that ourselves? So that's kind of my big concern that hopefully will.
Yeah, I mean, those are all good questions. I mean, we were on a call this morning and there are other states out there that are looking at a certain threshold of vaccination rate and therefore a mask would be optional. So that was pushed this morning and that question was asked. And we've been asking Dr. Hannah, I know it's too early to tell, but we've asked her through email, but also last board meeting about what metrics would the board and the district look at certain levels to see when it would be recommended to be safe to make it an optional choice. So those are, all good questions. And I know there are some pushes, especially at the high school level, I guess you could say grades 6 through 12, is if schools get their vaccination rate up to a certain point, would the DOE or the CDC consider that to be safe to, not require masks anymore, make it optional?
Okay, thanks, Patrick, for that. Yeah, I do, we've said it before, and if it needs to be reiterated, we'll continue to reiterate it, that this is not the penultimate decision. It's not the ultimate decision. It's not the penultimate decision. I fully expect we'll be revisiting this question, hopefully not frequently, but at least periodically, through the course of the year. And as we learn more, as CDC guidance continues to shift on this, and it shifts, if not daily, certainly weekly, we'll revisit it as often as is necessary. So, Jamie?
was wondering if Patrick could speak to the positive case that we've already had in the athletic team and how many people were affected and how many people needed to quarantine because of that. And will they be able to start school? I'm trying to count in my head and
Yeah, I won't go into great detail. Just, we did have an individual, tested positive, and we did have to, now the protocol is our nursing staff, still consults with the CDC, but they work together and to do the close contacts. And now that, which is a good thing, is that now the question has to be asked, who's been vaccinated, who hasn't, using the database. And so, I believe there was 15 to 20 students that, need to quarantine. And then we have some that don't need to quarantine. And so I don't know, I haven't looked at a calendar to know whether they'll be, in school or be able to be in school on opening day or anything like that. But again, we still communicate closely with the CDC when we do have a positive case. So.
Thanks, Jamie. Jen?
Can I just add one quick thing? One of the reasons why we put forth to you our desire to want to do pooled testing, and you all voted for it, is that in a case like that one, for that sporting event, if all of those people had opted into pooled testing, only the person who was who actually had COVID-19 would need to quarantine. If you opt into pooled testing, you don't need to quarantine for both classroom or school-sponsored activities, including sports. So whether you're vaccinated or not, that's one of the reasons why the Department of Education is really recommending this, because they and we would really love for, like you're asking, Jamie, kids to not miss sports time, the things that make them happy, class time, and that sort of thing.
Thanks, Katie. Jen?
Just a few questions around mask and masking breaks. One, we had a question, are bus drivers required to wear masks? Thank you. The other one is I would like to have a report back from our building principals at the next board meeting that talks about how they implement mask breaks with their staff, how it's done, when it's done, how frequently it's done, how they are going to be overseeing that process to make sure that that is implemented. And I would like a report back next board meeting from the building administrators, and the following one. I want to keep on this issue, so I'd like to hear how they're developing that with their staff and how that's being implemented. The question about sports and masks. If a sporting team is having something inside, and it's part of their practice, if we do go with masking, even though, would that function of the sports team still need to be masked if they were inside? And this is not,
Yes, if they're inside,
If they're inside.
it doesn't matter if it's locker room or if it's, an activity that they're doing in the gym because it's raining out or whatever, if masks are indoors.
okay. And the tents that we'll be getting, are those going to be accessible to for classroom use, or is it more for breaks and other activities? And if they're going to be used for classrooms, are they going to have tables and sides and heat?
They have tables and chairs. I don't believe that we put any sides on them or any heat in them. They're usually with us until, I think we did end of October last year. So yeah, they're designed to use to take a class outside, because, a regular break, they can just go outside and, be out there for a little bit or be outside for recess.
Okay. And that was it. Thank you.
And Jen, just so you're aware, in the guidelines that Patrick went over, it does include staff mask breaks as well. So that's something we're going to make consistent across all our buildings. When staff are alone in their rooms, they can take a long mask break, and they can take breaks with their students when they're offering the frequent mask breaks throughout the day. So that will be consistent in every building.
Okay, any other questions from, yeah, Lorna, go ahead.
So I have a few, starting with the pre-screening tool. I haven't looked at the CDC's new tool, but just wondering if there's been any thought of any of our students doing some kind of interactive video, or if there's any apps we've looked at. That's my first question, in addition to the CDC's new tool.
We have not looked at any of the apps for the screening, and just based on last year, because this is something we checked in with our nurses about, it actually, people were very pleasantly surprised with how on top of and honest folks were using the tool that wasn't electronic. So we're still continuing to not go for an electronic tool.
I also meant to ask, what does our enrollment look like? In our budget report, we had about 1,847 total kids. Have you seen any major shifts?
Haven't seen major shifts. I mean, we've had a couple, many families move into the district, but we've also had some that have chosen homeschool, in the last couple of weeks. So again, it's hard until, they come the first day of school, but we'll provide updates on that.
The other question revolves around masking. And as you all know, we got lots of suggestions and concerns from constituents that were deeply divided. And so obviously, as we approach this, I feel like we have to find somewhere in the middle between abundance of caution and no caution at all. So with that in mind, I think Annie Sarbanes had brought up, and she actually had emailed us after, the issue of mask equity. And I'm glad to hear that we're looking at getting schools to communicate the availability of masks. Maybe not every kid has the coolest mask from Old Navy or Athleta. So mask equity was a question that actually came right from constituents on how to make sure everyone can change it and also have equal mask availability. That was on masking. And then breaks you've already covered. And I agree with Jennifer on the plan for that, if that could be possible. On mask breaks, and again, I know last year was last year, but I know in the high school, kids like to bring their Dunkin' Donuts or their coffee. I see that we can have drinks now, at least, water. What's the position on that if somebody wants to bring in an outside drink?
We actually did speak about this, and if kids want to bring in an outside drink, they just need to put it in a container with a lid that won't spill. So if they want to buy a coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, they just need to put it in a thermos so it can be in their bag and be taken out for mask breaks to drink it.
And then on masking exceptions, from what I understand from the current SOPs, those accommodation requests start with your nurse, and does that go also, I would imagine, and Dr. Hannah, you can chime in, I'm assuming that that's a partnership with a medical professional.
Yeah, so for mask exemptions, I think they would communicate with the school nurse, but ultimately they're talking with their primary care doctor about that and determining number one, is that something that is appropriate for a particular student? And then also, if there are certain barriers, how do we move past some of those barriers? Are there strategies that we can use to move past those barriers? And that's similar to the strategy that, or actually it's exactly the same as what we did last year. So, so it's a conversation between a family and their primary care doctor.
Thank you. On vaccinations, I know we're not requiring them. And I know you mentioned that we're going to continue to partner with Midcoast. Did you say we don't have a date yet?
They're waiting on information for possibly when the next vaccines will come out for different age groups to have any more public clinics in schools. And so We did reach out wanting another one at the start of school, but they're currently not doing them until they know more about when more student age level vaccines are coming out. So it's not an option for us right now. But Dr. Hannah could probably speak to that more, but kids can go get them in the usual places if they're
That's
aged.
right. They can still get them in the usual places. So pharmacies are administering them. Midcoast Hospital is still administering them. But in terms of running a specific vaccine clinic, they are making plans and are pretty far into the process for when they open up vaccinations for younger kids. Because obviously vaccinating them in a big auditorium may not be as easy as adults coming through. Kids, sometimes need, they just have different needs. But that is well underway in terms of the planning. But vaccines for the older kids are still available easily all over.
That's what I meant, a vaccination clinic for kids who are eligible. So we, right now, there's no plans to have one right now.
They're not running any through schools right now because vaccines are so readily available. So we did ask to host, but they're currently not hosting in schools.
So it's just my 2 cents. But again, as we talk about incentivizing things, that just, I understand what you're saying. We can't control that, but that just seems interesting. Anyway,
We could look into providing buses to places where they are being offered, if that's something that we'd be happy to put together, because our nurses were excited to host again. And then we found out that they weren't doing that. And so I could definitely work with them on getting some buses to places like Hannaford or wherever where they're doing vaccinations. That would be easy.
yeah, I mean, again, as we can't fix everything this minute, but as we look to the future, and we're looking on the community for some help with these multi-layered strategies, that would be very interesting to see if we'd get interest in
Sure,
that.
I'd be happy to look into that.
And then on pool testing, and I guess this just goes with everything, are there, when communications go home, and there's these opt-in forms, are there translation assistants available for that, for those in our community who might need that?
Yes.
Band and chorus, I did print off the SOP as we have it now, and I'm glad to hear that at least they have more flexibility with that. But it looks like they can, if they mask and distance, if they're inside, have certain coverings over their instruments. But the next question that goes along with this is Mohaiba. Way too early to tell on that? Are we saying that right now, no events, no large events?
Yeah, I think it's too early to tell. I mean, could we pull something off that, you break it up into different sessions, you be creative, be flexible. We know it's important. So yeah, I don't have an answer for that tonight.
Yeah, I think we have to look at this as a work in progress, as we said, as we know, what we're looking at today in terms of SOP and CDC from DOE and CDC guidance is likely to change. We would hope that as vaccines are now have been finally approved by the FDA or CDC, whoever did that final approval. Maybe that will change people's minds on getting vaccinations, as if that vaccination rate goes up, if we get good participation in pool testing, and as the fall progresses, and as someone said, we get to see what happens, or CDC gets to see what happens in those districts that don't mask versus those districts that do mask. Hopefully we'll see refined guidance continue to come out, and that will enable us to move forward in a way that um, eliminates some of the layers that we that we're now talking about, masking specifically. I mean, I think that would be my hope for sure. But there's only so much we know as of tonight, August 23rd. So
And can I just say one more thing? And I think last year, that was kind of our, yeah, it's moving and it's fluid but now the DO, it's been put in our lap now. Last year it wasn't. And this year, we're the ones with all these decisions. So I do respect that absolutely, and I understand it, but I hope that as we move forward, and I feel confident we can, that we just have, I just don't want to just wait for the CDC to provide us recommendations. I mean, they've already, as you know, it changes weekly. But anyway, those were my questions on the plans.
Jennifer, did you have?
Yeah, and I'd like to, when we're talking about masking, I'd like to know at some point if masks are available, new masks are available for every student in the classroom, if that's something that we have resources for, and if they are not something you have to go and ask someone else to get one in some other place, but if teachers have a supply as kids are just coming in from recess and coming in from lunch, as they walk into the classroom, are they able to just pick up a fresh mask, at midday or whenever they need to, if we have enough of a resource of masks for that to be possible?
We will.
Okay, Jennifer. Good. You're all good. Okay. Questions, Lou?
Hi. Yeah, I just want to kind of reiterate where I think, and Lorna, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but where I think you were going with that. It is put in our laps now, and so if we were to go in a direction where we are erring on the side of caution with masks to begin with, especially in where the kids can be vaccinated, I think the whole intent is in being this cautious is that we still want to have the homecoming dance, we still want to have Mohiba, we still want to have, especially for the, these big events in the high schools. I think we want to, we're doing this not, I mean, to do that, but to keep everyone safe so that they can have as normal a year with all the activities as possible. And if that means someone's taking off a mask to sing, well, so be it. They're on the stage and people are out in the auditorium. This is where we have to, as Lorna eloquently put it, between, overly cautious and abandon, we got to be in the middle and be reasonable. And so that's what I'll be looking for if, we say this is where we're going to go to begin with and be as safe as possible. But that's why we need those reports every month. That's why we have to determine what is safe to make sure these activities can be as normal and progress as possible. So I just wanted to thank you, Lorna, for bringing that up.
Okay, thanks, Lou. Any questions, comments? Sure, Lorna.
I did have this on my notes. And then I just also wanted to acknowledge that I know what our community transmission looks like, and it has worsened, and I realize that, but a lot of people have pointed out, constituents, about our data, and it's true. We have great vaccination rates, and our community transmission is low, relatively speaking. But what I've realized is that what we have to do to respond to a positive case does not correlate to how good our numbers look, and that's frustrating too, right? So we could have the best, I think actually we do, last I looked, out of all counties, but we still have to treat every COVID case the same, and then that's taking kids out of the classroom, possibly shutting down classrooms, and we've got over 300 staff. And so it's already a labor market where we have shorthanded. So, to preserve that, as frustrating as it is, that's where we're at. No matter how good our community transmission is, it seems like the response is the same as it might be in Androscoggin or York County or what have you, for how we respond. That was it, Steve. That was my last note.
Thanks. Thanks, Lauren. Comments, questions? Yep, Anita?
I just want to kind of go off of some of what Lorna said. We are in a very difficult position here, and when I think about the numbers, I've thought long and hard over the past week, and our transmission rates and trying to weigh the risks and the benefits of mandating masks in our schools. And I will say that I am not comfortable at this time tonight to mandate masks to start our school year off. And that's based on a number of different things. And actually, I'm going to take that off before I pass out. There are several things that I've taken into consideration, and one of them is those numbers. Here in Saginaw County, just looking at this month alone, we have had 41 individuals confirmed diagnosed with COVID-19. And this is 0.12% of the total population of our county. It is extremely low. Since June, we have had 1 hospitalization and we have had 1 death. And yet we are asking our children to come into school starting the school year, covering their faces and taking on all of this risk with masking that we've heard people talking about. The CDC and DOE are not mandating indoor masking at this time. We trusted their guidance last year when they did mandate it. We followed that guidance. Why would we not trust their guidance now? I don't think that their position is weak. I've heard some people express that opinion. I believe that their position is based in science, which has evolved in its understanding of the virus and what truly works to mitigate spread. And that includes public education over mandates that tend to generate resistance. We've seen that with vaccine resistance as well. Also, there are yet to be understood short and long-term consequences to wearing a mask for extended periods of time. There is a legitimate concern that has been expressed by many parents about the impacts developmentally, mentally, emotionally, educationally, and socially on our children. And I feel like we're failing to address that wholeheartedly. Some of these negative impacts we've already seen and heard about, and I don't think it's something we should easily brush aside. And finally, I feel strongly that unless and until the numbers show a need for a public health mandate by the CDC or Department of Education, it should remain up to parents and individuals to make an informed decision for themselves, and that the district should continue to strongly encourage mask wearing indoors by anyone who can and will, but that we not make it a mandate tonight. Having weighed the risks versus benefits of masking here in our community, I simply do not feel that mandating masking in RSU1 schools is a reasonable or necessary action to take tonight. As a representative of my community and its children, I represent every person and not just a majority. And it was hard for me to think about speaking publicly tonight. I'm not a big public speaker. But I felt like there were people who spoke that needed to be represented here tonight, and I've chosen to do that. Safety is more than protection from physical illness or harm. Safety means that we provide a place where our children are free to associate and to communicate and to simply be themselves without hindrance or judgment. I do not think it is necessary or helpful to bring a mandate into our schools that is not being also mandated by the CDC or DOE, and without more compelling data. I want to be clear, I'm not standing for or against wearing a mask at this time or any other. I've been wearing a mask like everyone else because I know that it is comforting to those around me, and I know that I have a role to play in protecting those around me. I'm simply saying that I feel we should not mandate mask wearing in RSU1 schools at this time, and for that reason, I cannot vote in favor of a plan that will mandate that. All that being said, that doesn't mean I do not realize that this could change at any time. Could change tomorrow. It remains a fluid situation.
And I know that as a board, we're prepared to meet as often as necessary to review the ever-changing information and update protocols as needed. Regardless of my individual stance on this, I want to clarify that ultimately, I will and do stand with my fellow board members in whatever decision is made this evening, and most importantly, with our school administrators, who are tasked with a very difficult job that they have handled with grace and professionalism over the past year and a half. I have the utmost confidence in their integrity and interest in doing what is best for our children, school staff, and our community. And we all stand united in our desire to ensure that every child in our community receives a high-quality, free public education, and that education is offered in an environment that is as safe as possible for everyone present. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Anita. Other comments? Sure.
I just have a question for Anita. And Anita, thank you so much for putting that much time and thought into your position. I respect you for that so much. And I think it's clear we've all been struggling, and what I struggle with is so much of what you just said. And then what I struggle with is knowing that the DOE and CDC, right, they're not mandating it. I don't know why. I think it's probably a legal or law thing that's way beyond my wheelhouse, but they're squeezing us to have uniform masking, as you know, in order to avoid quarantines. And that is what's bothering me so much, is that if we don't require it, and then we have close contacts, which you know what I'm saying. So I'm curious as to, and I'm not putting you on the spot intentionally, but because it's been bothering me so much, I'm curious as to what you think about that, knowing that that's the current SOP that they've put out.
That worries me very much as well, and I've thought long and hard about it, and when I looked at everything, and the more I heard people speak, and the more I read the public comments that we received, I just feel that I lean more on the side of being willing to take that risk than I am to risk the emotional and mental well-being of our children, as well as the unknown physical risks.
The other question I have, which because it's been troubling me greatly too, is you all heard me at the June meeting when things did look very different, that I also said that we're in the business of educating, which I feel like we haven't been able to do for 17 months. We have high schoolers that haven't seen 5 days of school in 17 months unless they went in on Wednesdays. So it's not that that's changed my personal opinion, but what does concern me, and this comes again from constituent feedback and things I hadn't thought about at that time, is that we do have some compromised kids in district, and we do have parents whose choice is to vaccinate when it's available. So that's what I struggle with too, is that parent choice does mean just that, and it means that maybe some parents who have written to us, many of them, and spoken to us, want to at least wait for the vaccine for the younger children. So again, I'm not trying to convince you otherwise or have you convince me otherwise, but I just appreciate your candor, and those are the things that are really bothering me too, that I may say parent choice and agree with it, but I don't have kids under 12. My kids are older and fully vaccinated, and I'm frustrated and they're frustrated that things are different and they have to mask possibly. So anyway, thank you for your candor, and that was just another piece of it on the parent choice thing that's been really bothering me.
Thanks, Lorna. Yep, Jen.
Thank you, Anita. I think what you have said comes from a professional and compassionate and completely honest place. And I can not only listen to what you said, but I can hear it as well and think about those things. And thank you for bringing those issues forward. I do believe that I've heard that from some of the input that perhaps there's an opinion out there in the public that the school board has deaf ears or is just going to arbitrarily follow one piece of advice or another. And as you can see tonight, we are absolutely not doing that. We all hear each other and the public. We listen to you, and we deeply consider and thoughtfully consider what's been said to us. But saying that, it doesn't mean that if I disagree with what's been said, it's not that I'm not listening, it's that we have some different opinions. And I think as we can see here on our board, that we welcome different opinions and we learn from those different opinions. So it is with much reflection that I have considered those issues that you've brought up, Anita, and I've struggled with them as well. And that's why I want onus and responsibility on every staff member to make sure that we are doing the absolute everything we can for children that are struggling with masks. And I think those are real concerns, and we have responsibility to address them and to handle those for all of them. I also want to say that I honor a parent's unique ability to understand their child. And I also hope that parents in the community will equally honor that we are not trying to decide what you do for your children, in your families, in your homes. What we are here is to decide what to do, how to do for the school, the entire community, and how to make those best choices. So I agree that parents have the choice and the ultimate understanding of what their child needs, but that parent choice is for you and your family and your homes. What we're here to do is be able to make choices and decisions on how to safely and best run an entire school system, and not for any one child, but for all the children. And not just the children in the majority, but for all the children. So when we make decisions, I don't feel like it's either honoring parent choice or not. I feel like it's you honoring your choices to do what's best for your child the way you see it, and also honoring our job and our responsibility here is to create the best, safest policy we can to run the school. I have learned a lot about, from the comments that were made, and I've been thinking about this, but it really made me recognize that we do need to be able, for our children and our teachers and our adults, to be able to be together next year. And it is those things that I think of, how can we keep children together in school, in person, for absolutely as much time as we can have, because I think that company of peers and friends and community is what's going to help us endure these difficulties that we're living in right now. And I think that because I've seen it personally myself, how being together really makes a huge impact. So I feel that that's where I stand on, even though I have the concerns that have been expressed here by other board members, that it remains the best possible path forward to keep all the recommendations that will allow us to not require quarantining and creating an opportunity for students that have to stay at home and stay away from their peers. But I do think we have a responsibility to address the other issues of masking consistently and creatively and in every possible way we can. So I invite the public's input on that, as they have already in this process. If they have any insight to different things that could be done or different approaches could be done, I ask and welcome those to come in. It is with a lot of work and thought that we go into what we do here on the board, and it's not light, and it's not without experience. For myself, it's over 2 decades of experience working in the school systems, being on the school board, the experience of being a child in these school systems. So we come from a learned place. We can't have all the answers. We're not scientists nor physicians. All we can do is gather all the data we can and make the best possible choices for all of the students in all our communities. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Any other comments? No? Okay, well, just for me, just to at least sum up my thoughts, I guess, I have read the same numbers you all have looked at. And there are a lot of numbers and they are conflicting, and it's an incredibly evolving and involved area of discussion. We are not infectious disease specialists. This is a public health issue. On my own, not representing the board, but as a board member, I've written our legislative leaders and as I can admonish them for making this a school board issue. We are not the place to make this decision. But we're charged with it. Lorna, you're right. It's fallen to us. I might, as I tried to divine my way through all this and deal with the conflicting data and lack of summative and studies to explain what the best way through this mire would be, I found myself, kind of being a reductionist in a way. I tried to bring this down to the simplest possible equation for me, anyways, in terms of my decision making. And as I've said endlessly, probably too many times, my single focus is to get kids back in class and to keep schools open. And in the short term, and I'll restate it as many board members have said as well, in the short term, I feel the best way to do that is to accept this layered approach that's being recommended by the administration and without mandating it being recommended by CDC, I guess as well, since they've incentivized things in elements that would allow us to keep kids in school even when infected. And I think that's the most important piece for me. We've got to keep kids in school. We have to educate those kids. We have to give them the peer contact that they're craving as we get into the school year. I hope we're not in a place in a month. I hope we're not in this place in a week where masks are necessary. But I think at this point, again, at least for me, if I'm going to stay honest to my objective, I have to support the administration's recommendations on this layered protection of distancing, testing, and masking. It gives us the best chance that we have at this point to open our schools and keep them open for a while. And I realize there are other factors that don't make this a good comparison. But when you look at other regions of the country where schools have opened, and read some of the reports on the number of schools that, although opened a couple weeks ago or a month ago, are already closed and experiencing widespread outbreaks among that student population. And I know there are many factors that don't make that a comparable or a comparable argument, but it does stay in my mind. I think the public has made some great recommendations, and people have taken this very seriously, and I do have to credit our community. We have experiences. We've read about experiences in other parts of the country, other parts of the state, where people come in and the best argument they have is yelling louder than the next person. And we didn't experience this here. I think people were very thoughtful. I think you as board members have been extremely thoughtful on this. The community's been thoughtful on it. And it's going to be an ongoing conversation for us, unfortunately. But at least for me, I think the best way to go forward at this moment is to accept the administration's recommendation. So.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank my colleagues on the board. I'm very proud to be a part of this board of directors here this evening because of the deep care and deep caring that each of you has shown towards our 2,000 kids. They're number one. Our chairman's absolutely correct. Our first goal has to be keeping them in the classroom and providing the best education we can under the circumstances. God willing, the circumstances will change over this school year. When they do, we're going to be waiting to take off a mask and do some things in terms of distancing and give the kids an opportunity to work closely together again, which they miss. I've talked to kids, I've talked to parents, I've talked to grandparents, I've talked to teachers. I made it a point to talk to some administrators in our system, and we all know how great they are. They don't want a mask, but they know they need it. And so my position will be to support the guidelines as they're presented. Anita, you were terrific. Wasn't she? Huh? She presented so beautifully. It had to be said.
Okay,
Thank
thanks,
you,
Bill.
Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. So do I have a motion on,
I move that we implement the RSU1 Health and Safety Guidelines for 2021 and 2022 as presented to the board by the administration.
thanks, Bill. Any second? Second by Jen. Okay. So the motion is to accept the guidelines. All in favor? Oh, that's right. Comments or questions? I'm sorry. You're right. Jamie?
I think what Lou said earlier about evaluating this at every board meeting is something that I fully support. So I don't know if I can amend that motion to include reviewing every 30 days or at every school board meeting, unless something changes and a special board meeting is required.
Well, we will certainly get a report every meeting. There's no question of that. Dr. Hannah had commented at one point to that question, put out that she thought maybe October would be too soon, or might be timely. But we can get reports. My thought would be, and I just throw this out to the board, whether it might take just a little bit more thought to try to figure out what are we looking for? What are those metrics? And what are we asking of the administration in this report? I mean, I've said we'll get together every 2 weeks if that's what the board wants to do. But I think it's important that we get an understanding of what we're looking for, whatever time period we put on this. I mean, we will get undoubtedly we'll get periodic monthly updates on the status of COVID infection in the schools. So there, I don't know how else to put it. But do you want to try to take this board meeting or the time now to try to, describe what it is we would be asking of the administration in terms of helping us get to that judgment, getting to that point where we can make that judgment that it's time, that it's time to change the protocols.
Well, I think that needs to be part of the discussion each month. My concern is just putting it blanket out there right now that then becomes harder to remove when the time comes. So if it's part of an ongoing conversation that it should be at the top of our minds every time we meet.
Yep. Okay. Lou?
Jamie, tell me if I'm wrong. I think the amendment simply stating that we are going forward, but the intent is to, not saying that it's a complete turnaround every month, but that every month we're seeing what's the status. It doesn't mean that you have all the metrics, but you might say, as example, well, we found that wearing the shields with the guards worked for the teachers in the elementary school so the kids could see their whole face. Maybe there's something, things are getting tweaked all the time because things are changing. This is a dynamic situation. So I think, tell me if I'm wrong, that you were just asking, can you amend the motion that we're doing this, but it's with the intent that this is evolving and that we just want to make sure we're getting whatever is appropriate each month. You're not going to have all the stats every month. It's going to be different, and we've just seen how quickly this went from June to August. Maybe the wave, as Melinda spoke earlier, maybe the wave comes up and it goes and we're back to where we thought we were before, or maybe there's something else and we have a different strategy. I don't know, but I think it's just that we want the public to know with how Anita put it so eloquently, that we're trying to work through this. So is that what you were? So it was just a simple amendment to the motion.
Yeah, so we could add language to the protocol that requires this to be an item of discussion at each subsequent board meeting, and make that as kind of the marker that make sure we focus on this on a regular basis. Would that satisfy? Okay. Okay. Is this on the amendment? Okay, go ahead.
I think it's important to memorialize that requirement in these guidelines, so I would happily support that, an amendment that it is indicated that we will be reporting and discussing it every meeting, and that we'll be able to make sure that we, as you said yourself, Chair, are communicating at every possible moment. So I would be in support of the proposed amendment.
Okay, go ahead.
Also on the amendment and but it doesn't have to be included in it, but just talking about elaborating more on what I think I understand what Jamie's saying. At very least, I'd like to hear, which I've asked a few times, I know it's not available, but I'd like to hear, because we're going to have to report it anyway, to state vaccination rates per school, if that's how it's being broken out, who has signed up for pool testing, and then just and then what are how many quarantines we've had, because I lose track. Like last year, I would just lose track on how many we've had. So that's kind of in my head.
Okay, well, I mean, that's what I meant, whether we want to get into an involved discussion to kind of lay out what we're requiring, or at this point, we're just setting a marker for an agenda item on a regular basis, and we'll see how the report comes in. It's 8 o'clock. I'm sorry. Okay, first, I don't want to lose track of what we're doing. We are approaching 8 o'clock. For those of you who've never attended meetings before, we don't go beyond 8 o'clock without a specific motion from the board to do so. So do I have a motion to extend the meeting beyond 8 o'clock? Anita, and a second, Jen? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? No, okay, fine. You had a comment, Laura?
That was it, that it's, if at very least each month, just to give it just a little more meat, that rather than just wait for a report, which might have certain things in it, if we could see vaccination rate by school, what our participation rate is in pool testing, and while respecting privacy, how many quarantines we've had per school and how many students that's involved. That would be a good start for me.
Okay, we have an amendment. Or Jamie has offered an amendment to include as part of the protocol, a requirement that we discuss COVID statistics.
I would just like monthly update.
A monthly
And then
update.
we can work, if we
on
don't
a
provide
regular
something in the
basis.
first, you want something more the next month, then we can certainly do that. But we've heard what you're kind of looking for, and we can start in September with that.
Okay, I need a second by Jen. So we're going to vote on the amendment first, right? I think we do.
Well, no, the motion now has an amendment.
We have to approve the amendment to the motion because some board members might not agree with the amendment, right? So does everyone agree with, so the amendment, we're voting on the amendment to the plan. All in favor of the amendment? We have a motion by Anita? No. A motion by Jamie, a second by Jen on the amendment. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, one abstention. Okay, so the plan is amended, and now we have the amended plan for a vote, which is the RSU1 Health and Safety Guidelines for 2021, 2022 as amended. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, so we have 6 in favor, 1 opposed. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks. And we've yet to cover new business. All right, item 12.0, new business. ESSER funding presentation and input. The process on these new ESSER funds, which I suspect Patrick will go into, is a little bit different than it's been on other federal funded programs. We're looking for input from the community and input from the board on how those funds might be used in the district. Patrick, do you want to, or Katie? I'm sorry, Katie.
So these American Rescue Plan funds, or ARP funds, or they can also be called or referred to as ESSER 3, are coming out of the ARP Act of 2021. The state of Maine received, just as an overview, $411 million, which they provided the amount that each district was going to get from that fund. RSU1's allocation is $4.1 million that needs to be expended by the end of 2024. Just as a quick overview before we go into the details of how we've sort of brainstormed where we might want to spend this money. It can be spent on these allowable purchases, like supplies to sanitize and clean would be an example, repairing and improving school facilities to reduce risk of virus transmission, purchasing educational technology to provide better access for all students regardless of where they're living, providing mental health services and supports, addressing learning loss. And so those are just some of the bigger buckets that we can use to spend some of this money on. In terms of the feedback process, the administrative team met and we came up with 30 possible ideas. I just want to stress that these are all just ideas, that we wanted to share these with the board right now collect any further ideas that the board had. And then obviously anyone who's listening to this meeting or here tonight, if you have additional feedback, we'd love for you to send an email to Patrick and myself for how you'd like to see these funds possibly spent. Of these 30 ideas, they fall into, I would say, generally 6 larger buckets. The first being summer programming. This summer, we were able to serve nearly 200 students in RSU1. And over the past few years, other than extended school year for special education, we actually haven't been able to have summer programming for students in some time. We also partnered with Jamie's organization, and we're able to service all of our middle school students through her program, through that partnership, both those in Bath and in Woolwich. We were thinking in terms of expanding the summer programming that we'd like to obviously still include special ed students in those programs, students who are in our Title I programs, but also have a non-identified students also being able to join, and perhaps opening it up for some sort of catch-all program that possibly joins what's going on at the rec, what's going on at MYC, what's going on at the Y, to make sure that every student who needs a safe place and food in the summer has somewhere to go. And so those are some ideas under that bucket. We also had a pretty successful extended school day program going on at Morse this past year, towards the end of the spring, that involved drop-in social work, extra mental health supports. We'd like to include and expand this to some of our other buildings, have tutoring, outdoor activities, non-sports related clubs, night events hosted at our buildings potentially, or using other facilities like MYC or the Y to give students a safe place to go. Through some other work we're doing with some grants, that's something that some students in the age groups we're looking to help more have requested. And so with this money, we might be able to do some of that. And also with staffing, mental health and emotional support has come up a lot, and it's something that we have been thinking about, are always thinking about, but more so over this past year, and will continue to this year. But including more staff with this money potentially as another bucket to reduce class size so teachers can form even better relationships with students, to provide more staff in intervention and our more social work for students who might need someone to talk to. The possibility of exploring the idea of expanding our pre-K program to support more students in that age group, potentially for a full day. Maybe think about transportation for that program, which we currently don't have. And obviously, making sure that the extra staffing also focuses on where else we can expand how we're supporting students, not just academically, but emotionally as well, and sort of thinking outside the box with that. The other 3 areas, the first is building improvement, and I know Bill spoke at length about that before. So we have, some of the work that could fall under other funds or these funds, including the boiler project, AC, or a roof. But we also want to think more creatively about possibly looking at outdoor trail systems and canopies, bottle fill stations, playground and fitness equipment. Again, thinking outside the box of how do we get students more involved and active outside of the school day to keep them occupied and healthy as a whole student. And the 5th bucket is PPE. So continuing to provide, as we talked about many times tonight, the free masks to anybody who needs them, continuing with our extra cleaning of the high touch surfaces and so on and so forth. And then the final bucket sort of falls under many ideas under learning loss. So extra intervention, possibly working with Maine Math and Science to look at how our math programming is doing, because we're finding we've made a lot of positive changes for literacy and haven't looked at math as carefully over the past few years, possibly looking at coaches to help teachers with instruction, and also potentially looking at positions like an after-school coordinator or community liaison position that could help with the tutoring, learning loss, and also connecting students with some of these programs. We've just sort of brainstormed, and also potentially a director of RTI or response to intervention to oversee some of these ideas as well. So there's a lot more I could say, but I tried to just categorize it so we wouldn't get lost in all the details. And again, these are just our initial brainstorm ideas. So we'd be happy to take more ideas from the board and also to add to this list, and also obviously from the public via email.
Okay, thanks, Katie. Comments from the board? Lou?
Just a question. Those are all fantastic ideas. How does that, what's the process? I mean, you get all the ideas because
Yeah.
obviously we can't do all of them, I'm assuming. Will there be a way of then prioritizing and figuring out, what falls where, or what are we thinking?
So we want to get feedback, and then we'll take that feedback, continue to narrow it down. And many of these applications, and I don't know, Patrick, if you know more detail about this than I do, is you essentially get to write bigger projects with lump sums in them. So we might actually get to have by the end of September a project that's called Learning Loss that has a few of our top ideas, and then we'll have a little bit more time to start exploring and finalizing and prioritizing which one of the decisions we'd like to go with staff feedback, more administrator feedback, possibly parent feedback to make some of the decisions.
So more to come on that.
More to come.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, just to note, if folks read that these funds are available for three years.
Yeah,
going
through
out, so-
2024.
Yep. Jen?
I love the list, Katie, and thank you very much for that. I would like to add an item to, I'd like to add some subsidy opportunities for before and after care programming. Any community needs assessment study will tell you that we are in a severe daycare desert. And several parents have told me that they can't find opportunities in their where they live, so they can't get children from daycare to the schools they need if they have to go outside their towns for that daycare because there's no busing. So I'd like to add that to it. I would also like to add the opportunity in regards to pre-K programming, if we could look into developing that with additional wraparound services to mirror the Head Start model more, to be inclusive in a family dynamic. And I would just like also to say that the transportation with pre-K or any of our services that we're trying to do is always the highest barrier to access services. So any transportation opportunities that we can provide are wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, I mean, this is sort of an open list at this point too. So again, as Katie said, if folks in the community are invited to email their thoughts as well. And if the board, if you walk away from this meeting saying, well, I should have said that, well, you still have an opportunity to say it and add to the list. But this will come back to the board in a different iteration of it, a more narrow iteration, and we'll talk about it again for sure. So any more comments at this point? Yep.
Yep. Also, some great things that I see on the list, and I'll probably just absorb it and email you guys. I guess the only comment, like you always hear me say at budget time, is things that we won't sustain beyond the 3 years. We need to consider that, obviously, you know that. You know, it's great that we have the money, but that having it doesn't necessarily mean we always have to spend it. But also just being mindful of, are we going to be able to carry it forever once we get this great program under our belt? But other than that, it's a great list. So thank you.
Thanks, Lorna. Okay, thanks, Katie. Item 12.2 on the agenda is additional state subsidy discussion. This is what Bill was alluding to. We're getting 800 and something thousand in additional state subsidy. This is not marked tonight as an action item. Patrick has indicated probably, you know, we don't have to take action on it tonight, but we can start the discussion on it. This is not a situation that's new to us. We have had this opportunity, I'll call it, in the past. And in the past, we've acted to share or to return some of that additional state subsidy to the communities. And we've retained some within our budget for fund balance for specific projects or activities that we may feel we want to accomplish as well. So it's not marked as action, but let's discuss. Any comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman, should this go to the Finance Committee first? You got a bottom line dollar that you presumably know what it's going to be, and you have some ideas as to what you would like to perhaps do with capital improvement or return funds to the communities. Those issues are all there. I really think it should go to the Finance Committee first, and the Finance Committee should make a recommendation to the full board.
Next month or so. Yeah. I mean, just to give you, I mean, I have it as a note here too, that it certainly can go to Finance Committee. I think that next board meeting, you know, we need to make a recommendation, a decision on this. And so again, it can start at finance if you'd like. I mean, really just wanted to let you guys know and let the community know that, you know, basically it's the lowering of the state set mill rate from 7.9 to 7.26 is the reason for this. And Aroostook and Phippsburg, as you know, are minimum receivers. And then Bath and Woolwich are the ones that receive the majority of our state subsidy in this district. And we've talked about the options are to give, part or all of it back, to the communities. The other option is the fund balance that we've talked about that would, go forward to the next year. And then the other option is the capital reserve fund, which right now currently has $200,000 in it. And we usually put $50,000 in a year. And that's for those big, sometimes unexpected projects like boilers or, other major capital or health and safety things that could be there. And so again, I know that our guidance is often that, from our attorneys is that all revenues, including state revenues, are based upon projections. And there have been times in the past where, districts have experienced a curtailment or a cut in funding halfway through a year. And so it's just to be aware of that as well. So again, just to put it out there, that, I mean, we do have to make a decision at some point here, what to do with that 893,000 roughly. And so we can, talk about it tonight, and we can also, bring it to Finance Committee.
I'd like to have a recommendation in September, primarily from Finance Committee and the superintendent, as to how we divide, if in fact they're to be divided, these funds.
Okay, I understand. Yep. Let's if we can just get a sense of the board, what they feel they would like. Go ahead, Jen.
I often and would continue to support returning a portion of state subsidies back to taxpayers. If that portion that we would return would make any significant impact to the mill rates in town. And if you return such a small portion, there's if it can't have really any significant impact to taxpayers, I have to kind of wonder how that is going to help our communities. But I would like to consider that. I would also like to speak in favor of trying to move swiftly with addressing the heat issue in Woolwich, because I think that's going to be significant coming shortly, especially with masks on. And we had to shut down, I believe we had to shut down classes because of that last year. So if our goal is to keep kids in school at all times, I really think that that project needs to be addressed swiftly. And I don't know if waiting another month to get approval is going to kick that possibility of getting that done when it's needed back too far. So I would like a recommendation before next board meeting on that issue if possible. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Any comments? I mean, we can put this back to the finance committee. You're right, Bill. It would be appropriate to go to finance to get a recommendation to bring to the full board. I think we also need, if we are looking at a specific capital project, we also need a report from Dave, at least for me, on how we're prioritizing projects in the district. I think all this could be accomplished. I mean, in terms of acting on this $800,000 and change, if we put it in capital reserve, we can take the money from capital reserve to pay for any specific capital, any specific project that we comes off of Dave's list in terms of priority. Lou?
Just have a question. So in the past, we've kind of split it, right? We gave some back to the towns, and then that's been the tradition when we've gotten this. Was that the only last time? Okay.
Here, that's what we've done.
Okay, that's
in
what
the
we've
past.
done.
Yeah.
No, I just think from what I've heard from people, there seems to be that expectation. At least that something would go back to the towns. So I just would, that would make
Well,
sense.
yeah, I mean, we can also balance that towns got an increase in revenue sharing as well. So, I mean, towns are looking at additional revenues as well. So keep
Are
that in
they?
mind.
Okay.
Jen?
A large part of that revenue cannot be used for property tax reduction though. So they do have more money to do some things with, but a lot of it you cannot do that. And this is the largest source of property tax requirement. So this is the one area where it could offset it some, but again, we need to look at, how to measurably make that possible for our towns. And specifically for property tax relief, because our part of property tax relief, our school budget is the biggest part of that. And a lot of our towns are facing reevaluations, which are going to mean even higher property taxes for a lot of people.
Okay, thanks, John. So we'll take the recommendation, or we'll take this issue to the finance committee, if you can call a finance committee in short order, and we'll bring the recommendation back to the board on. Okay. Okay. Item 13.0, we're looking at our next regular board meeting for Monday, September 27th at Morse. I think we'll decide whether we're meeting back here in the gymnasium or in the fishbowl at that point. If there's need for a special meeting to deal with any issues, obviously we'll call one as needed. All right. Any other business? If not, I will take a motion to adjourn. Okay, we have a motion by Bill, second by Lorna. All in favor? Any opposed? No? Okay, thank you very much.